Good evening, everybody. My name's Steve Whitfield and I lead the social, emotional and mental health strategy within the Education Directorate. And it's with pleasure that I'm here tonight to give you a little session around understanding and supporting school attendance difficulties, as I know this can be quite an issue for many families and for many children. What the research is telling us is that it's usually impossible to find a single reason for a child's difficulties. And it's recognised that there are common risk factors that can be grouped into child, family and school-based themes. Risk and protective factors can be used as a framework for thinking about the different elements that contribute to a pupil's attendance difficulties. And what we do know is that absence from school becomes a real serious problem when the stress that the young person is feeling exceeds any support, and those risks are greater than the resilience. So it's really important that we think about what are those risk and protective factors across the three areas: the child, the family and the school. And that's what the research is currently telling us is what's important. So in this session, I'm going to cover two parts. I'm going to cover the bit about at home and away from school, and then I'm also going to cover a little bit about at school or at the setting or provision. And within those two parts, the first part, I'm going to cover these themes here. The fact that school can be hard for some children. Some may need to have some downtime, listen and let them be heard, build in time for connection, and work with the school and setting and ask for help. So we have to acknowledge that school can be really hard for some children, that the children can feel emotional, physical and mental exhaustion of a whole school day. They've been trying to fix and manage and mix a load of things like learning, social expectations. They've got growing social awareness and all the feedback they're getting from their teachers and their friends. And I like to think about us as having an emotional pot, and throughout a school day, all of those things go into a child and young person's emotional pot. And actually, we never really know how full those emotional pots are unless we know our children really well, and we can sense when they're about to overflow or when they're not very full at all. And when they come out of that school environment, it sometimes feels like this is a pressure valve that's being released all throughout the school day. You know, it's a bit like a bottle of fizzy drink, that it's been shaken up. And when they come out of the school day, that's just going to go everywhere. And if children feel safe to express themselves, that they will do so. So the transition from school to home can be really challenging for some children. They may have difficulty separating from you as their parents, and equally it's a relief when they see you at the end of the day, because you're a level of safety for them. And they're maybe frustrated at the same time that the child wants you but is finding connection difficult at that moment. It's often a positive reunion, but it's also a really emotional one, and it can be really hard for some children to challenge, particularly those who are neurodiverse, those who are coping with all those sensory things that they've had to cope throughout the day. And that effort of having to contain that when they come out of school could be really difficult, and they can't hold on to it. Hence that analogy of the bottle of fizzy drink. For older children, the transition home can be really tricky too, and they may need space and time after school, and they may not want to talk about they may not want to talk to you. and they may want to just be on their own for a bit. I think we have to acknowledge that both of those things. So if school is difficult coming out for your children, then one of the things you need to think about maybe is giving your child and young person some downtime. Have a think about what they need when they come out of school, and it will be different for different children. It'll be different for different days of the week, and we always want to connect with our children, but sometimes asking how was your day is not the best way of doing it, because sometimes they will just grunt, or they won't even give us any sort of answer at all. And so asking how was the day is probably not a good question. I know, being a parent myself, I tried not to ask that sort of question at all. So there's a better way of maybe connecting, which is to just give some genuine emotional connections, such as, I'm happy to see you, I'm glad we're going back home together, it may be happy to see you come out of school. And I think those calm and positive and supportive words are important for children to hear. And I think that's really important, that they know we're there for them. I think it's important for them to also know that we've listened to them. Listening is really important, because, as I said, how was your day will perhaps just get a grunt, or it's fine, shrug of the shoulders, but actually, was it? And you'll know your children well, and you can read between the lines, but think about what you're trying to find out. And it may be that you can be really specific about what you're trying to find out. So help them to feel listened to if you're going to ask that question. So can you remember a topic or assignment they had, and what was going on with their friends, if they were talking about, if there was a theme happening in school that that they've been learning about. So that connection is, rather than saying how was your day, it could be around saying, I'm happy to see you, and I hope you had a good day, and what was that learning like that you were doing? What was that topic you were doing? And that way you can be there. You can offer yourself as someone who wants to help and is interested in what's going on. So I think all of that, feeling listened to and respected, helps to build that genuine connection. I think that's really important for children when they come out of school, because if they don't have that opportunity to connect with you in a genuine sort of way, you may never really know what has been going on for them. They may never want to tell you, and I think that's feeling listened to is really important. So this time for connection is really important after school. So knowing your children well, knowing that they're loved no matter what, is really important, and it's a great way for your child to know that they are loved no matter what. So that's snuggling up in front of the TV, or reading a book together, playing a quick game, or just having a chat with a drink and a biscuit, finding out what's going on, or what's happening that night, or what's happening tomorrow. If you think about your morning routine, what's that like? Is there anything you can build on from your morning routines that can help them feel connected to you? Because presumably there's a morning routine, and that's as important as the coming home routine. And in the morning routine, you may well let them know that you're looking forward to seeing them later, just for who they are, not for what they've achieved. So it's about helping your children with those emotional literacy skills, that building resilience, the problem solving, as well as that transition, learning to make things more predictable for them. So often we've got to be the surrogate brains for our children, helping them to plan ahead, helping them to get organised, helping them to know what's coming. because they won't be able to remember it. So using those morning routines around what's happening, have they got their lunch, how are they going to remember their lunch, how are they going to remember that they've got a club after school, how are they going to remember those other important things. If your child finds that separation difficult in the morning, give them a note or give them something of yours to have in school. And for some children, knowing that their mum or dad or their carer is just a phone call away, and that won't be withheld if they want to connect with you is really important. And also think about the sorts of where the conversations you have are helping. So it's about helping your children with that emotional literacy, helping them to make things more predictable and less scary. Because the one thing about our stress response is that we all have stress, and stress is a really important thing that we have to learn to manage, because actually it's a protective factor for us, and we can never turn that stress response off, but we have to be able to make our stress response tolerable for us. And I think if we can help through our better connection with our children, know what's going to happen, know what's going to go on in their lives, making things predictable, that certainly helps. Nobody likes unpredictable things. And the last thing I want to touch on out of these 5 is if your children, if you think your child needs some help, then ask for it. And your child may be upset when they come out of school, and there may be some difficulties that have happened that weren't addressed, and you're dissatisfied, and that there may be things that have been unresolved. So I think being able to go into school and say what's been happening for your child, and that you want some help to understand that, and the school can be part of that, I think it's going to be really important. And I think you will know whether your child's behaviour after school changes or is different to what it usually is. So the school can be part of helping you understand what's going on. So it may be that you need a better way of communicating with the school to unpick that, to be curious about what's happening. So you may need a homeschool communication book so you can understand what's going on, and through the homeschool communication book you may be able to connect with your child, because within that you can talk about things that have been happening. You can, especially if there's things in there that are very positive and that you haven't known about, but it also could be things in there that you could identify as things that you know at home are stresses for your child, and that school haven't picked that up. So the stresses could be particular types of food, or particular sensory needs, or particular topics or themes. It could be anything. So I think that's really important, that the school learn from you as the expert from your child, as well as you learning from the school about what's going on, because working together will help resolve those issues. So I think that's really important. So those are the four things about, or 5 things about what you can do. Acknowledge that schools can be hard for some children. Let them have some downtime when they've come out of school, because that transition back can be a challenge. Listen and let them feel heard. Asking the right sort of questions, building that time for connection, and how you do that, and then work with your school and setting and asking for help. This last part is around what we're encouraging schools to get better at. So we've been working with our schools and settings and with our other colleagues across the agencies that support schools to think about an approach to supporting best practice and guidance for maximising school attendance. So this is a document that is currently still in a design phase, but we've had something similar but not as good being used by schools. So this is a school document, and it's going to be called Let's Talk, We Miss You, Best Practice and Guidance for Maximising School Attendance. And the aim of the document is to have one guidance, one best practice document available to all in Essex, including our partners, to have a shared common language about what we mean by this topic and the themes within this topic, and to have a common message. We think this is going to be helpful for schools, so that no matter which agency you work with, the agency will always be referencing this document, Let's Talk, We Miss You. And there's a big emphasis here on helping children and young people to be in school, because we know that in terms of well-being and mental health, schools can be a really strong protective factor. And if children aren't in school and have been out of school, actually the research is telling us the best way to get a young person back into school is as quickly as possible. The evidence is that the longer a young person is out of school, the harder it will be to get them back. So the school needs to accept they're part of the problem and they're part of the solution. So the good supports needed, adjustments and adaptations within the school environment may well be needed too. So the objectives going forward will be to have a training offer that will empower all of our professionals to use effective assessment intervention procedures. So all of our schools will have this. And we're going to launch in the spring term properly. And there will be within this document for the schools some resources of best practice. So it'll be the first port of call for all elements of best practice. So I talked about the importance of sharing a common language, and one of the most important pieces of shared common language is this reference to school attendance difficulties. So our preferred terminology for it is going to be school attendance difficulties. So it will encompass the communicating behaviours of any pupil who struggles to attend or stay in school education setting for any reason. So we're going to ditch those sort of dated terms, those unkind terms that almost label the child as being the problem, such as truanting or other terms that are perhaps even worse than that. So school attendance difficulties will be our preferred term, and through the use of this common language, we must take real care, and we're asking schools to take care, schools and settings to take care about not attributing the cause or the motivations which are unknown or misleading. So the term refusal, as an example, is, I think, increasingly seen as really unhelpful, as it suggests that willfulness on the part of an anxious pupil, which can obviously obscure the underlying cause. So the term truant and school refusal are not helpful terms. And equally, we are introducing a term called emotionally based school avoidance, where it actually has been established that a pupil's absence is because of an emotional distress such as anxiety. So in the literature and in the research, this is now a nationally recognised term to more sensitively describe what's going on. So emotionally based school avoidance, and it's one of the things that may be happening for a child who has a school attendance difficulties. It may be because of that anxiety. So we're going to encourage schools to really think about working through 7 general principles through using this document. So the first general principle, as I alluded to at the start, is around the importance of intervening early. And with that, they must involve you as the family of the children and work with you throughout to support, to understand, to get underneath what's actually going on. And the third general principle is this notion that actually we've got to involve the children and young people in their discussions about the needs and what support they require. Having intervened early, working with you as the families, working with the children and young person, we must then develop an action plan based on a personalised and holistic approach. Now, throughout 1, 2 and 3, within the document, there are some assessment tools that will ask you as the family some questions, and your child also some questions about what's going on, what's happening in school. Some of these questions are really sensitive, but are really important that they are answered as honestly as possible, because actually we all know that sometimes it's the school where the problem is, and it's the school therefore that needs to change. But equally, it could be that actually there's a problem within the family that needs to change, and there needs some support as well. So what the surveys and what the questions do is just tease out that, and there are two assessment tools, and what they do is they provide information around what are the protective factors. So there could be some very strong protective factors within the family that the school didn't know about, and for example that the young person belongs to a club that the school didn't know about, or plays a part in a local youth group, or it plays an instrument, or is very keen on cookery. There will be things within the assessment that schools will not know about, and those protective factors within the family are really important. Equally, there'll be protective factors in the school that maybe the family and the child didn't know about, such as a particular subject that's going on. So intervening early, working with the family, actively involved in the child and young person, and develop that action plan based on the personalised holistic approach are really, really crucial. And the assessment tools will help schools ascertain what is happening, what's the function of the school attendance difficulty, because it may not be very clear at the outset. And people may say, oh, this is about anxiety, but when actually we look at the assessment that's come back, it's actually not about anxiety, it's about something else. It's about socializing, and it's about the friendship groups that the young person is within, and actually the anxiety is somewhere else. So we're asking schools to review that plan regularly with all parties, but also number 6 is really important in that they've got to accept that the journey will not be smooth. There will always be relapses when we're talking about any sorts of behaviour change. And we think about us as adults, we often start change of routines ourselves with all good intentions, and we have setbacks. That will happen with the children and young people. So the built into the general principles here is accepting that the journey will not be smooth, but actually we're not going to give up. We're going to carry on with our message of we miss you. You need to be. We're working to have you back in school. We're working to have you to understand you. And if we do need to involve external professionals, then we'll do our best to do that. And we're encouraging schools to think about what external professions are on offer. So that initial exploration and screening through those assessment tools, I think, is really crucial, because at the end of the day, it's really difficult to find a single reason. And I know sometimes people want to find a single reason, and you know, when we make assumptions about what that single reason is, and as I said at the beginning, we know that absence from school becomes a serious concern when the stress exceeds the support and the risks are greater than resilience. So using the assessment tools, using that curiosity that we get by asking those questions from the child and the young person, and from what's happening in school, we can find out where the risks are and where the protective factors are, and build on that, and then build a plan. Encourage the schools to build a plan with you around moving forward, and pulling together a framework for thinking about the different elements that are going to help the pupils' attendance get better, so that they no longer have those attendance difficulties. So that's a really important next step that I wanted to share with you around what's happening for our schools and settings in the spring term, and how we are helping our schools to think about things slightly differently, in a more compassionate and kind way, not in a blaming and shaming way, and that this is a tool that will be used, as I said, across all of the agencies. So no matter which agency that a school or a setting is working with, this will be the go-to tool. And as I said, it's still in the final design phase at the moment, where we're proofreading it, cross-checking it, because there'll be lots of resources, lots of links in it. So I think that's important that you know that this will be launched in the spring term, and that this is part of what you can ask from a school if you've got a child or young person who has a school attendance difficulty. Are they using the Let's Talk We Miss You guidance? And finally, I just wanted to share with you 3 places where I think there's some great stuff for parents around the topics of emotional well-being, mental health, including attendance, including transitions. They're on the BBC bite-size links there. I'll show you a quick example of what sorts of things are there. So this is the parents toolkit. There's something on bullying, activities, well-being, learning. So here's something here: 5 tips to handle the after-school meltdown. If you're interested in learning about that, we talked about that transition and what happens. The bottle of fizzy drink, and the young person is feeling like that. How to talk to your child about the cost of living crisis is another example, currently on the bite size. There's something here about starting primary school, how to get your child's bedtime routine right. Visiting schools during the pandemic was something that was there. How to help your child get on with other children, and so on and so forth. And there's another parent here supporting preparing your child practically, parenting surviving guide, the cheat. This is for secondary age children. 7 skills a teenager can learn in a month, homework, and the pressures there. So some nice resources. If you're interested, you may already have known about those. So that is my session complete. Thank you for attending. I hope it's been helpful. I hope it's been succinct enough for you to take something away with you.